I just got back from Sonic 2. While I can't show footage of the film besides trailers due to copyright, I'm still going to be spoiling the entire film talking about Eggman here. So if you have any interest at all in seeing it, do it now before you watch this video. As one of a small handful of people who wasn't particularly big on the first film, I think this one did a much better job pleasing the fans. It was just Sonic and Eggman as far as real Sonic characters in the previous movie, and Jim Carrey's Robotnik was an entirely original character who had nothing whatsoever to do with Eggman. However, the final scene of the original has the Doctor get stranded onto a mushroom planet, where he goes bald and gains the character's trademark mustache. This teaser was thankfully actually paid off in Sonic 2, as it picks up directly where our previous movie left off. 242 days later, Jim Carrey is still stranded out here, and he's developed some complicated Rube Goldberg machines in the ridiculous amount of time he's had to himself. Throughout this time, he's gone more insane than he already is, and has devoted himself to raw hatred of Sonic the Hedgehog. His hatred feels considerably more earned when he's had a fairly long time to stew about it and become bitter over it, as opposed to his conflict in the original movie being more relevant. Jim Carrey is still Jim Carrey in this film, and does act very wacky, something like Judge Doom from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Honestly, Jim Carrey makes Judge Doom look pretty tame by comparison. Yes, this is definitely still a large step away from the Eggman we know, but at least there's an excuse this time, with the implication at the start of the film that Eggman has gone insane from his 242 days on the Mushroom Planet. The most obvious scene of him now being outright crazy, rather than just being his personality, is going rabid like a dog to try to attack Sonic, just flinging his powerless body onto a moving car's windshield like a stupid animal. He doesn't do anything else quite that crazy for the rest of it, thankfully. I can't talk about Eggman much longer without bringing up Knuckles. In Japan, this movie is literally just called Sonic vs. Knuckles. That's how central Knuckles is to this movie. The inclusion of Knuckles in this film is a master stroke. The guy improves the quality of nearly every scene he's in. It's by far the most legitimate, longest lasting, and mutually beneficial partnership Eggman and Knuckles have had. Previously, all Knuckles would contribute was generically hitting switches and laughing in his big villain appearance in Sonic 3 on the Genesis, with few exceptions. In the more story-oriented Sonic adventure, he would go on to get tricked by Eggman for a second time, where Eggman barely even has to say anything to Knuckles to convince him to target Sonic instead of him. Knuckles then has one of the most pathetic boss fights in all of video games, where his single most infamous voice clip comes from.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no!
And that's it. Knuckles is never antagonistic again for the most part. As a good guy, his roles are relegated to finding the Master Emerald, which barely even seems to do much of anything, or just being Sonic's wingman who does what he says. That's if he's lucky, because after Sonic Heroes, Knuckles fades into background obscurity, being nearly as much of a cheerleader as Amy Rose is. Sonic Heroes came out in 2003, that's a pretty long time ago. Now, in Sonic 2, this is shockingly by far the most seriously we've ever been able to take Knuckles. He can actually defeat Sonic one-on-one, overpowering his speed and defeating him in combat on multiple occasions. He constantly insults Sonic as the lazy child that he is in this movie, and tells him to stop making horrible, unfunny jokes and to just die honorably at his hand. His new voice actor is clearly a much better direction for Knuckles, as his character has seemed rather confused, with writers having no idea what to do with him for the past 15 years or so, at least. Is Knuckles tricked by Eggman like usual in this movie? To an extent, yes, but they have a legitimate alliance that lasts a good 2/3 of the film, and are constantly on screen working together. Both characters immediately hate Sonic and join forces because of it. They have real reasons to team up with each other. Eggman has to actually work to win Knuckles' allegiance, pitching himself as a useful ally who can help him get what he wants. Whereas in the games, Eggman just says,
"Obey me,
Dr. Eggman!
I am your master,
Sonic!
who is your enemy."
and Knuckles blindly believes him like a fool. When Eggman finally does betray Knuckles by going to claim the Master Emerald for himself while the furries fight each other, they've been working together long enough that Knuckles had even started thinking of him as a friend. They've gone through an entire video game level together, filled with booby traps at this point, in a lost temple, so it's not exactly unfounded. The Master Emerald itself is far more relevant in this film, as it's an artifact of generic power now that is basically as powerful as the Chaos Emeralds from the main game. This makes Knuckles' obsession to get it feel justified, rather than it just being some arbitrary task given to him by the writers, so that he has something to do. Eggman manages to get these powers for himself, and quickly teleports out of the temple while destroying the ruin Sonic and Knuckles are inside of, nearly drowning them. Yes, this is the first canonical appearance of Super Eggman. There's no more excuses now, Sega. Give me Super Eggman in the video game. I'll wait. While Eggman doesn't spontaneously turn into a Dragon Ball character, he essentially uses his new powers to become Magneto from X-Men, grabbing all of the metal from the nearby city, dismantling all technology that the military tries to use against him, and forms a gigantic Death Egg robot. If Jim Carrey was not on model for you in Sonic 2, I will say that the Death Egg robot definitely is enough to make him feel like the true, real Eggman, since that design is pretty much one-to-one with the original, big and fat. The Death Egg robot is treated with a considerable amount of respect for a movie monster, effortlessly winning for most of their fight. The heroes are forced to distract Eggman to get inside of the mech and attack Eggman directly, knocking the Master Emerald out of him. You would expect the fight to just end there, since this giant mech was made spontaneously out of Eggman's Magneto powers he got from the Emerald, but in some of the most unexpected competence from the character, Eggman does not give up. It's still a giant robot. Why should it need the Emerald to keep functioning? The main thing that the Emerald did was create this machine, not power it. So many villains would just generically throw in the towel here and call it a day. Jim Carrey Eggman, of all characters, manages to still keep the fight going a considerable while longer. Eventually, Sonic manages to find the crushed remains of the Master Emerald in the wreckage and goes into his super form. But even when Sonic does go super, the fight is not entirely over. Sonic decapitates the Death Egg robot and gives Eggman the opportunity to surrender, but he doesn't give up even then. He's far too insane and blinded by hatred for that. The giant head of the mech isn't needed either. It's pretty much just a reflection of Eggman's ego to even model it after himself. Eggman goes on to send the mech's fists at Sonic in a last-ditch attempt to kill him before he is finally defeated. Dr. Eggman's assistant from the first film, Mr. Stone, returns in a much more direct comic relief role in this film. Stone is obsessed with Eggman and is completely lost in life without him, and during the 242 days where Eggman is stranded on another planet, Stone just runs a coffee shop and makes artwork of Jim Carrey, in his original appearance from the first film, in the coffee. It is very strongly implied that Mr. Stone has romantic feelings for him, but Eggman never returns those feelings. A lot of people find this funny, but I'm personally not a big fan. Stone comes on so strong you'd think Eggman would really comment on it at some point, but he just ignores it like nothing happens. That said, Eggman does regularly insult and abuse Stone a few times throughout the film, which you can kind of see as an indirect response to it. When Knuckles suggests taking him along on their quest, Eggman says there's not enough room for him on the ship, which just comes across as a blatant excuse, like he doesn't want him to be there. Eggman later allows Stone to be brought inside of the Death Egg robot to help pilot it, but Stone messes up comically multiple times, and Eggman has to take the controls away from his incompetent minion. Stone eventually somehow manages to get knocked unconscious when he's at the controls, just from the machine jostling around. It's a pretty pathetic display, honestly, but it does further glorify Eggman. Eggman doesn't show any concern for him, he just casually throws him out of the way and goes to the controls himself. Stone is basically fulfilling the role of Orbot and Cubot from the modern Sonic titles here. And I'll say at least some people find him funny compared to the frosty reception of those two robots. Stone also actually gets abused by Eggman, a fate which the robot pair don't even get to suffer very often nowadays. By comparison to the games where Mike Pollock's Eggman scenes will often be trapped in a room with nobody to talk to but those two stupid robots, Eggman constantly has Knuckles to bounce off of for most of the movie. And even when Jim Carrey's alone, he manages to be an entertaining character. He doesn't need a generic character who exists entirely just for him to talk to. While not all of Jim Carrey's extreme overacting lands 100% of the time, I'll say the funniest character in this film was definitely Knuckles, not Eggman. Despite how much more seriously Knuckles is taken, he's also the biggest source of comedy as well. Knuckles' characterization in this movie is an honorable warrior, yes, but he's also something of a caveman who doesn't understand technology and the customs of Earth. When Eggman and Knuckles solidify their partnership, Eggman proposes a handshake before Knuckles nearly crushes his hand in his. That'd be funny on his own, but after that, Eggman intentionally has Knuckles give Stone a handshake later on, knowing what it's going to do to Stone, clearly wanting him to experience the pain as well. Knuckles' stupidity is mocked by Eggman and Stone a few times throughout the film. such as when Knuckles is reading Sonic's text messages on his phone out loud. The difference between the stupidity of Knuckles in this movie and the unfunny Knuckles from Sonic Boom is that Knuckles isn't truly stupid here. He's just lacking in knowledge about Earth, and his honor code makes him somewhat predictable and easy to take advantage of for the villain. While he's more serious in this movie than he's ever been, they didn't fall into the trap of making him edgy either. This is one of the best takes on the brute character archetype I've seen in a long time, much less from the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise. It's definitely something worthy of praise. If you're a Sonic fan, there's little doubt in my mind that you will enjoy this movie. If you're not, I will say there's a lot of very questionable decisions with this movie whenever Knuckles and Eggman aren't on the screen, but that's not what this video is for. Everyone has mocked the random Serbian dance scene and the wedding sequence to death. There's 30 minutes of fluff from the film that could easily be chopped out and nobody would miss it, but the good stuff overall made this film exceedingly worth it for me as a fan of the property. The palate cleanse on Jim Carrey Eggman and the best interpretation of Knuckles I've ever seen gave me a massive feeling of catharsis after seeing this film. Now, the main reason I made this video is because I have an hour-and-a-half long video where I ranked Jim Carrey's portrayal of Robotnik in the first movie as his worst appearance ever, primarily because he doesn't look or behave like the character we know and love. I'm still not a big fan of that one or its Robotnik, but it does look better in a retroactive light when it sets up Jim Carrey for this vastly superior one. As far as where I would rank him on that video's list of Eggmans, I'd say there's enough good about him to crack the top 5, just barely edging out Eggman's appearance in the Sonic OVA. I still don't like Jim Carrey spouting references to pop culture, and he's sometimes a bit too wacky for my taste, but it's easily forgivable. This is a very quality entry in Eggman's lineup of villainous appearances. After this film's release, Jim Carrey said in an interview that he was the one advocating for the character to look more like the video game version, so I definitely don't blame him personally for the shortcomings of the previous movie. He even said he wanted to be fat, but the studio turned him down. Any problems with the character pretty much come from the writers, and he's shown that he has a lot to offer to the role. Carrey has shown interest in retiring after this movie came out.
I have decided to announce my retirement.
And there have been very few characters he's come back to play twice. This would be the first character he's played 3 times, so unfortunately we may not get a third movie, which would be a shame. There's a tease for Shadow the Hedgehog in the ending of this one, and after they handled Knuckles so spectacularly, I would be really excited to see what they could do for Shadow's character. Shadow is really similar to Knuckles in that he's a rival of Sonic who's been misused by the modern Sonic writing team for a long time, and they have no idea what to do with him. So I'm excited for this movie franchise to try to revive the character. Some people were expecting Metal Sonic as the next guy to get the live-action treatment, but considering he doesn't speak, I'm glad they opted for Shadow. Whether or not you liked the first movie, I hope you can respect how I liked this movie while not finding the first one anything special. I think I've gone over the movies in enough detail now, but before this video ends, I'm obligated to quickly bring up my ranking of Sonic X from my Eggman ranking video, which I ranked as his 3rd worst appearance ever, which a lot of people don't agree with. To sum it up, the primary reason why I hate Sonic X Eggman, aside from just the dub, is the fact it does Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 so dirty. These are his best and most iconic appearances, and they're just casually glossed over like nothing in the Sonic X anime. Mike Pollock's voice inflections in the dub make it impossible to take any of the good moments seriously. Some younger viewers got to see these games for the first time through Sonic X. I feel like they could never experience the original performances in their full glory now because of it. Many of Eggman's best scenes from those 2 games don't even exist in Sonic X, and if they do, they're just made considerably worse. Without the 2 retellings of the adventure games, I would have been much more generous to Sonic X, as it's just good Eggman appearances done bad. People defend the sub of Sonic X, but something I'm going to bring up now is that Sonic X was a kids show airing in 2003. The average kid watching Sonic X, myself included at the time, was not going to be smart enough or dedicated enough to watch the show with Japanese voice acting and wouldn't want to read subtitles. When the dub was so bad in the first place, forgive me for not exactly being excited to want to watch the entire thing again with a few minor changes. The damage is done for me, and it was done for plenty of other viewers at the time. Regardless, without those adventure butcherings, it's a fairly harmless Eggman depiction, not deserving of quite such a low ranking. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you like this video and want to see more, check out my video where I go over every other Eggman appearance besides this one in agonizing detail. I still have my next big video on Paper Mario villains in production, which is gonna be my longest video to date. If you want to see that video when it comes out, be sure to subscribe. Until then, have a good one.